The May 3rd, 2023 meeting of the San Mateo County Board of Education will come to order. As is our practice, this meeting will be recorded. The board provides remote access for members of the public and welcomes all community members joining in person and remotely. The board is following the requirement of Assembly Bill AB 2449, which enables remote participation by board members only under specific circumstances. We use simultaneous interpretation in Spanish for those attending virtually through the end of public comment. Translation will continue further into the meeting if people are utilizing the channel. Thank you to our interpreter, Teresa Mendeville, for joining us remotely. For meeting attendees wishing to access a Spanish translation channel on Zoom, click on the interpretation button on the menu bar. We ask that all speakers be mindful of the Spanish interpretation and speak slowly and clearly. I ask board members to speak directly into the microphone and remind all speakers who are wearing masks to remove their masks when speaking in order to be clearly heard by all attendees. I also want to warmly welcome our Youth Commission Liaison, Seth Weinfield. Good
Thank you
evening.
so much for having me again.
Thank you. Item 1B is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion to approve the agenda made by Mr. Cannon and a second by Ms. Alvaro. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion passes with a unanimous vote, and the agenda for tonight's meeting has been approved. Item 2A is public comment. Guidelines for public comment are available on the San Mateo County Office of Education website and in board docs, as well as on the table outside the boardroom in both English and Spanish. If there are speakers who require Spanish interpretation, our interpreter, Ms. Mendeville, will interpret following each speaker's comments. At this time, members of the public may provide comment for topics not included on the approved agenda. The County Board of Education does not act upon any matter that has not been agendized except under limited circumstances as permitted by law. It is the policy of the County Board to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. Superintendent McGee, do we have any comments submitted prior to the meeting?
We received 2 comments prior to the meeting, and one of those comments I see is has a hand raised for speaking, so we'll wait on that one.
Okay,
But the other comment received was from Misty Sego. And it's a comment in response to the report on the Gateway Learning Series. So it was submitted in writing and has been forwarded to the board and will be posted tomorrow. But it's also an item on the agenda, so it might be that the speaker wants to speak just before that item. So we'll be sure and ask that question when we
Okay.
get to that spot. The other item submitted in advance was by Colleen Yu from the 17th District PTA. And Colleen had her hand up, but then she put it down. So, oh, now it's back up again. All right, so it was submitted in writing, but I think we'll also go to speakers online next.
okay. All right, thank you. Speakers are invited to make live comment and have 3 minutes to speak. The board's executive assistant, Jennifer Perna, will keep the time and advise when the speaker has 30 seconds left. Please keep within the time limits. To make a comment over Zoom, Members of the public may use the raise hand feature. Instructions for using this feature are provided as an attachment in the board packet. Once the hand is raised, please wait to be acknowledged by Superintendent McGee. Superintendent McGee, are there any members of the public attending remotely who wish to make a comment at this time?
We have 3 hands raised, and I'm going to start with Colleen Yu, since I already addressed her written comment.
Okay, thank you.
Colleen?
Yes, thank you. Are you able to hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Good evening, board members, youth representatives, Superintendent McGee, attendees, and guests. I'm here to give our report as the 17th District Vice President for Education and Health on what's happening both in San Mateo County and statewide. The officers slated to serve on the 17th District Board for 2023-25, effective July 1, include Juanita Flores. She'll be the incoming district president. She's currently on the South San Francisco PTA Council as president. She's a former School Smarts Parent Engagement Program facilitator, is employed by the South City Unified School District, and we're very excited. She's bilingual. She was our 17th District Convention Chair, and she recruited board members from first-time San Mateo County delegates. So we're very pleased that Juanita will be stepping up into that role. PTA's 126th annual convention took place last month in Sacramento. During the 3 general meetings, delegates heard from the California Teacher of the Year, listened to a powerful presentation by Diana Pastora Carson about growing up with her brother with Down syndrome, his institutionalization, and eventual progression to supporting living on his terms, in large part due to family advocacy. Attendees saw student creations featured in a dedicated gallery space and were honored for their Reflections art submissions in dance, film, literature, music, photography, and visual arts. The state PTA offered 48 workshops for local PTA leaders, both position-specific and issue-related, over 5 sessions. Of particular importance, and what I'm very excited to share with you, are delegates approved 4 resolutions at convention, and the resolutions provide authority for the state PTA to take positions on legislation that impacts children and families. My submitted written comments have additional detail, but the 4 resolutions were equitable literacy for all students, inclusive education for students with cognitive disabilities, synthetic and tobacco-free nicotine products, and aid to survivors and victims of sexual violence and their families. Our current term will end June 30, 2023, and our 17th District San Mateo County PTA will support local leaders by holding virtual training on June 7th. Thank you for allowing me to share in detail to illustrate how PTA remains at the forefront of advocacy, communications, leadership development, and family engagement, and how we are excited to continue this work collaboratively in San Mateo County.
Thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time to talk with us this evening.
So our next public comment online is Janice Pellizzari.
Good evening, President George, Board Trustee, Superintendent McGee, Youth Liaison Reinfeld. I would like to make a personal comment before putting on my other hat. I really appreciate that Dr. Watson accepted the invitation that this organization sent to her. And I really, truly think she has a powerful message that she's bringing out, and wish or hope that everyone would hear what she is saying and then take a look within and see, you know, whatever. I just want to thank you for letting me speak from my heart for that. Now, as board president, as president of SMCA, I want to thank the board for coming out to look at our programs. I know you have a specific role, but it's nice that you are still taking an interest in what is best for the students in that you are trustees over. The year's coming to an end, and I know there's a lot going on with how our programs will be running next year or what people are going to do. I know we are down kids next year, and teachers and staff will stay the same. I'm hoping that we can find out sooner than later what the county office's thoughts are with what people will be doing next year, and include us in some of the plans or whatever you're thinking about or they're thinking about. I just wanted to say that. So thank you and have a good night.
And our last speaker online is Heather Hopkins.
Hi, good evening, trustees and Superintendent McGee and staff. I'm calling on behalf of Community Equity Collaborative, it's Heather Hopkins, in time for Mental Health Awareness Month. Just so you all are aware, one of our new projects at Community Equity Collaborative is in response to a 2021 law that gives public school students days off from school for the purpose of supporting their mental health. And for those absences to be excused. So CEC has collaborated with Safe Space, which is a youth-led mental health nonprofit, to create some really nice information and resources for students and families and school staff about how important it is and when to take occasional mental health days as a way to reduce chronic absenteeism and to be well, so that they can arrive at school and be ready to learn. We have some great resources on our website, communityequitycollaborative.org. In addition to an info sheet for students, we have one for adults. We have that in Spanish as well. We have a sort of FAQ or a what you can do for school staff and wellness coordinators, and then a sample announcement that can go in any kinds of communications like a newsletter. We are also looking for assistance with translation into simplified Chinese if anyone has a resource there. I believe some of you have my email address, but I believe Superintendent McGee can pass along the website and email address if you don't have it. Thank you so much, and thanks for your service.
Thank you. Members of the public may also provide live comment in person. Superintendent McGee, do we have any cards submitted this evening?
Yes, we do have one card from Christian Morales. Christian?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Happy May. Again, Christian Morales, Vice President of San Mateo COE, Chapter 887. Our members have been working on a position description questionnaire for the classification and compensation study. So we thank the Personnel Commission Services Department for their leadership and guidance through that process. A lot of our job descriptions haven't been updated in around 16, 17 years. So we look forward to the results of that study. Additionally, the California School Employees Association respectfully requests the San Mateo County Board of Education to adopt a resolution declaring the week of May 21st through 27th, 2023 as Classified School Employee Week. The California Legislature adopted the third full week of May of each year as Classified School Employee Week by passage of SB 1552 in 1986. Classified employees perform a wide range of essential work, including food services, maintenance and operations, transportation, instructional assistance and paraeducator services, office and clerical work, security, library and media assistance, computer services, and more. Classified staff provides daily care, transportation, and instruction for California students, guiding them from preschool through community college. The week of May 21st through 27th, 2023 will be celebrated by school districts and school workers across the state in recognition of the many contributions that classified professionals make to the education community. On behalf of nearly 2,500,000 classified employees represented by the California School Employee Association, we ask you to join the state legislature and hundreds of school boards in adopting a resolution declaring the week of May 21st through the 27th, 2023 as Classified School Employee Week. Thank you for your consideration on this matter.
Thank you. Are there any other cards?
No more cards.
Okay, thank you. Public comment addressing specific agenda items will be heard immediately before the board takes them up. If members of the public wish to speak to a specific agenda item, please use the raised hand feature when the item is announced, or if in person, submit a card in advance of the item. Item 3A, Lori Owens, Chief Technology Officer, Integrated Technology Services, Business Services Division, will introduce Nelson Sandino, Manager, Integrated Technology Client Services, Business Services Division.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Board President Gerard, members of the board, Superintendent McGee, and Commissioner Weinfield. I have the pleasure this evening in presenting to you someone that you have seen not too long ago, Nelson Sandino. He is now serving as our Manager of Client Services. And he was here just a short while ago, having been promoted to another position. So he's moving up that ladder pretty quickly. So I will let him come and again reintroduce himself and explain a little bit about what he's doing now. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Gerard, members of the board, Superintendent McGee, and Commissioner Weinfeld. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy that I was selected to be the manager of the Client Services Division for Lori's group. In my position, I manage 4 very professional, highly skilled and knowledgeable technicians who help out the paraprofessionals, principals, and staff in our organization. Very thankful to have come on board 2.5 years ago as a network engineer and helping the network services department, and also most recently the work with the cybersecurity initiatives. In this role, I hope to continue the work of the vision of Superintendent McGee, the board, and Lori Owens to provide like the best service and assistance to all of our staff. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you and congratulations. Item 3B, Lori Owens, Chief Technology Officer, Integrated Technology Services, Business Services Division, will introduce Peter Kazanis, Coordinator Network, Architecture and Cybersecurity Business Services Division.
Okay, thank you again, Board President Gerard, members of the board, Superintendent McGee, and Commissioner Weinfield. I have the pleasure this evening in presenting to you our newest coordinator for cybersecurity and network architecture. And I think that our board member, Alvaro, had an experience just this morning with a phishing attack. And so this underscores the importance of this role, not only for us here at the San Mateo County Office of Education, but we're also planning to expand our services to help particularly our small districts in this area. Cybersecurity is one of those areas that we can never let our guard down in. And very, very happy to have Peter Kazanis here with us, very experienced individual. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he is going to help us with the initiative. So with that, I am going to present him or ask him to come up and present himself and give you a little more information about him.
Good evening, President Gerard, members of the board, Superintendent McGee and Commissioner Weinfeld. My name is Peter Kazanis, and I am really excited to be part of the San Mateo County Office of Education. Spent the last 25 years in K-12 education, coming from computer technician and a classified employee to being the director of technology in 2 different school districts, as well as a middle management supervisor. And this is a really exciting position to be in. It allows the focus of really an important issue, not only within our schools and our community, but just nationwide. Cybersecurity is becoming much heated and hot topic when you start thinking about foreign affairs, as well as our local initiatives here within the San Mateo County. So with that, I am looking forward to really developing a program that educates people more around cybersecurity, as well as shoring up our own defenses and awareness, so that way we will not become victims. So again, so excited to work for the County Office of Education and appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, congratulations, Nelson, and welcome, Peter. We're delighted for both of you. Thank you. For item 4A, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the April 19th, 2023 regular board meeting as presented?
So moved.
Second.
There is a motion to approve the minutes of the April 19th, 2023 regular board meeting made by Ms. Alvaro and a second by Mr. Cannon. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion passes with unanimous vote, and the minutes of the April 19th, 2023 regular board meeting have been approved. Item 5 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is not debatable and requires a unanimous vote for passage. An item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular order of business for separate discussion and action if any member of the board, the superintendent, or the public so requests. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval.
Second.
There is a motion to approve the consent agenda made by Mr. Cannon and a second by Mr. Limpert. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion passes with unanimous vote and the consent agenda has been approved. Item 6A, Erica Ng, Coordinator Inclusive Education, and Kim Bambeo, Coordinator Mathematics, will provide a report on Universal Design Learning Center, learning content and applications in San Mateo County. Before we begin, are there any comments by the public? Thank you. Coordinator Ng?
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Gerard, members of the board, Superintendent McGee, and Commissioner Weinfeld. I am Erica Ng, and I am the Coordinator for Inclusive Education. This is my second year in the role. I've previously stood before you as the Coordinator for English Learner Support Services.
Good evening. I'm Kim Bambao, Coordinator of Mathematics, and I'm just going to take a few minutes to set the stage before handing it back to Erica, who's leading this work. So Erica and I both work in the Curriculum and Instruction Department, and in our department, we really look closely at the San Mateo County Office of Education vision, excellence and equity in education, and really considered what's the goal that we should have in our department to help us reach that vision. And what we landed on was to decrease and eventually eliminate the predictability of student outcomes based on race, language acquisition, disability, and economic status. And we came to that decision partly, actually a big part, by looking at countywide data of summative statewide assessments of our students in both English language arts and mathematics. So you can see in these charts here, on the left side, we have English language arts, and on the right side, we have mathematics. And we're looking at the same cohort of students from grades 4th grade through 8th grade. In 8th grade, this is 2019 data. And what we can see here is that there's a line that has 0. 0 indicates students, those are scores where students are meeting the standard. So if you have results above 0, you are above standard. And if you have results below standard or below 0, then you're below standard. And you can see in this data here, when we look at the student groups, and the lines represent students groups by race, by economic disadvantage, English learners, and students with disability. And when we look at the data, what we consistently see over time is that our Asian students, our white students, and students who are identify as 2 or more races in both English language arts and mathematics will consistently score above standard, while our students of color and our English learners and our socioeconomically disadvantaged students are below standard. And of course, we find this unacceptable, and we want to change this. And so part of what we're doing in our department is that we are really understanding and embracing Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, and supporting our districts to be able to understand what is universal design for learning and how it can be used to address these inequities so we can reach our goal. And then, of course, together reach the vision of San Mateo County. So now I'm going to hand it back to Erica.
So, these graphs show that, along with other data, kind of help our CIS group form our collective why, what drives us to do our work. And when I look at these graphs, I see the bottom 2 lines, which are English learners and students with disability. And we see that they do worse over time. What you don't see in this graph is how they do in high school, because it stops in 8th grade, because this is a cohort data. But I always think about what our boss, Jared Prolo, Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, says, that for English learners, for example, the longer you're an English learner in our county, the worse you do. So that means in high school, they do worse. And that's what drives our work. And so we think about, as a group, who are the students that we're centering? We want to center those in the margins, and we want to design for those in the margins. So what does this all have to do with UDL, Universal Design for Learning? As I said before, we want to focus on those who are in the margins, and our group believes that focusing on Tier 1 instruction, building robust primary instruction in our county is one way to do that. So before I go into more details about Universal Design for Learning, I wanted to show this graph, which speaks to maybe the tendencies that educators may do in the classroom, right? Many teachers are often taught to plan for the middle. We create lessons, we plan and think about most students, and teachers know that after we teach or during we teach, there will be some students who maybe already know it and might need a different plan. And then there might be some students who didn't get it yet, and then we'll need to do something else. And we often call that differentiation. The difficulty with these tendencies of planning for the middle or planning for the average is that, one, who's doing most of the work? Usually it's the teacher doing a lot of the work for a lot of the students. And then another difficulty is that the teacher now is maybe creating 10 different lessons or materials for all the variety of students they have in their class. So I'll give you an example. I was doing work in Redwood City, and one administrator, where I was presenting on UDL, she realized that in the past, she had 10 different EL, like you have 4 EL levels, but she recognized that she would have had to plan for 10 different small groups in her class. And that's tiring, that's doable, but maybe not as sustainable. And so for Universal Design for Learning, we're not saying that we don't differentiate, but there's another way to look at teaching and to approach it. So on this slide, you see 3 images. Todd Rose was a research scientist and professor at Harvard's Graduate School of Education. He also wrote the book, The End of Average, and he gives a TED Talk on the end of average. So in his book and TED Talk, he talks about how the Air Force in the 1950s and 60s, they had a problem. They needed to improve their Air Force pilot performance. But the problem that they realized was that the cockpit of their planes were designed for the average fighter. But there was a scientist by the name of Gilbert Daniels who decided to research okay, what is it that we need for these cockpits to fit everybody? And he measured over 4,000 pilots on 10 dimensions of average, like physicality being height, shoulder width, all of this in order to determine the best design for the cockpit. And what he found, which is up there, is that out of 4,063 pilots, not a single airman fit the average range. And so as a result of that, the Air Force decided they needed to do something different for their cockpits. They decided to ban the average, and they're not going to design their cockpits for the average pilot anymore. And instead, they're going to design to the edges. And that meant that they would take the shortest pilot and the tallest pilot and figure out a way to design a flexible seating for their pilots so that everybody could have access to the tools within the cockpit and perform at their best. And so what you see in that last image is something that we all probably enjoy nowadays in our cars, automatic seating. And that was a result of this airport or Air Force pilot study, right? And so if we take it to the classroom and we learn from what Todd Rose says, if we design learning environments on the average, for the middle, in essence, the odds are you've designed them for nobody. And so Todd Rose, his main point is that learner variability is the norm. And that's a big idea in universal design for learning. Sometimes we think of variability as an exception. We may even think of it as a inconvenience, right? But it's the norm, and this idea that there is no average brain. All learners have a jagged profile. So if you look at that image, it shows like language, knowledge, all these different dimensions. Every learner has a jagged profile, and nobody fits the average all the time. So if we're designing for the average, we're not designing for anybody. So CAST is an organization that created the UDL framework. Todd Rose worked with them. His work on variability is a big underpinning of the UDL framework. And the framework basically encompasses neuroscience and strategies. And they believe that they want to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all students, so it's inclusive for everybody. And I want to make a note, and I tell this to the districts when I go out to speak to them on UDL, that UDL is not a set of strategies. It's a framework. It's not just, oh, do you do this in the classroom? It's a way that we can look at the people around us and how we address the work. So, which leads me to another definition of UDL, which I really like. Katie Novak is another big voice on UDL. In addition to CAST, she's also worked a lot with CAST. But according to her, UDL is an expression of a belief that all students are capable of, one, learning at high levels, so standards, right, in inclusive and equitable environments. But students are also capable of becoming expert learners who can make effective decisions for themselves. So contrast that to what I told you earlier, where teachers might be making all the decisions. Under UDL, we want students to have that agency, to have that reflection time, to think about what works for them. And so part of the goal of Universal Design for Learning is to create expert learners, students who are purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, strategic and goal-directed. And I think about it like this, it's putting students in the driver's seat. Rather than the teacher always driving them around and showing them where to go, it's giving the student the opportunity to drive, but also to pick the route, right? It's helping students understand what is the learning that they need to do and what is the pathway that might work best for them to do that. So here's an example. Some examples of learner variability might be, it could be in the form of a disability, but it may not be. It could be introversion. It could be some people are just shy. They don't want to speak all the time, right? Or some people just need a lot of time to think before they're ready to just speak. So those are all examples of variability that are known. And so with variability, we want to design for flexibility because we know that when we design for those in the margins, it works better for everyone. And instead of what we usually do now is offering accommodations to certain students through an IEP, we make certain accommodations available for everybody because we don't know who might benefit. So the images up there show wheelchair ramps. Wheelchair ramps might be an example of an accommodation that was designed for wheelchair users. But nowadays, we know there are many people who benefit from wheelchair ramps. There are delivery people with their dollies, travelers with their suitcases, parents with their strollers, toddlers who are just learning to walk, people like my 95-year-old grandmother who's walking with her walker, right? So that's just an example of when we design for those in the margins, in this case, students in the classroom, a lot more people can benefit than we might anticipate. And so I want to end the summary of UDL. There's a lot more, but we just gave you the highlights of this quote, because part of universal design for learning is recognizing the barriers. Sometimes in education, we like to blame the students. We might blame families, but it's really not about blaming anyone. It's recognizing that the design of the environment is not the best. So the barriers are in the environment, and there are some predictable barriers that we can remove. So like when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. We don't blame the flower for not growing. We may move the pot so it's receiving different light sources. We may change the water. Maybe we'll change the pot itself. And so that gives you an analogy for universal design for learning. And I'm going to pass it to Kim so she can talk a little bit about how we're trying to integrate UDL.
So with UDL, our districts have a lot that they're trying to manage, and teachers in the classroom with instruction and learning. And for them, sometimes it can feel like one more thing. You're trying to add one more thing. How can I keep going when I have one more thing to do? And the beauty of UDL is that in the content areas, we've really found alignment in what we are already doing in our subject areas. So an example of that is in mathematics. When the Common Core standards were adopted, we not only adopted content standards, which describe what students need to know and do at each grade level or course, but what was really revolutionary and unique is that we adopted mathematical practices. And there are 8 common mathematical practices from kindergarten through grade 12, which describe the behaviors and dispositions we want to nurture and develop in our students so that they can gain a depth of understanding of grade level content. When we looked at these when we looked at the UDL expert learner characteristics, as Erica showed you earlier, they were completely aligned to the mathematical practices, the dispositions of learning that we want to support our students. So that's our entry point in mathematics with teachers, is with UDL. It's to find that we want to support students to become expert learners, to really know themselves as a learner and be able to manage their own learner. We want that for them in mathematics and for all content areas and anything that they want to do in life and learning. And so that's the space that we bring people in. In the ELA and ELD framework, student choice is written in, which is another element of UDL. So UDL doesn't need to be one more thing. We were really working hard in our department to make sure that we can support our districts to see where it can integrate into what they're already doing and refine and enhance teaching and learning practices.
And on this slide, we wanted to just give you an idea of how UDL is taking shape in our county. The top part are districts or ways that SMCOE is partnering. So with Pacifica School District, we just did an all staff, it was like 150 people, the whole district in April on an intro in UDL with the hope that we can go back and do content integration and just work more deeply with the staff and the administrators there. In Redwood City, it's looking a little different. I have been going out to do UDL with the district administrators, their site administrators, and their TOSA, so more of their leadership groups, so that they can learn the updates on UDL, what it is. They've been also learning about updates in math and ELA in the hopes that together we can kind of start to formulate what tier 1 instruction will look like in Redwood City and then plan for professional development there. It's interesting in Redwood City, you know, UDL is not just about impacting the classroom. In Redwood City, we've also talked about how do we remove barriers and consider variability, even in the SST process. And so it's beyond the classroom. It also moves into meeting spaces, right? I think a lot about how do you create belonging. If we can make everybody's variability the norm, that might be one way. And then in San Mateo Union and Sequoia Union High School District, it's been more indirect. I've been going out with Gwen Lee, our coordinator for English, Language Arts, and History Social Studies, And when we do PD for English, I've kind of been just planting seeds of UDL just to model what it could look like in PD form for teachers. And then the last bullet, reimagining math for all, or Kim and I like to call it RIMFA, is not work with districts, but it's a PD opportunity that she and I have been developing and offering it to teachers in the county. We started it last summer. We're going to continue our second year this summer. But it's been really a good learning experience in terms of the goal to integrate in a content area, for both of us. And I think what we're formulating through RIMFA could be applicable and brought to districts in some way when they're ready for it. And then we did want to mention that Hillsborough and Jefferson Union are not working directly with SMCOE to bring UDL to their staff. They are partnering with Katie Novak's consulting group to bring UDL to their staff. But it's good to know that this is happening. So hopefully we can form a network in the future. Sorry. So last, we just wanted to give a little bit of a glimpse to the future of what we're working towards. So there's an image right there that's a stool with 3 legs. That comes from Katie Novak. And, this is the framework piece where it's not just about skill set, which is strategies. That's part of it, building teacher skill set, but it's also supporting and addressing a belief system about students, that all students can do it, right? And also, though, you need the system drivers. It needs the system pieces, because a few teachers doing UDL isn't going to make the changes that we want to see for all the students. It does require a systemic lens. So we want to continue to deepen and expand our partnerships with the districts that we're already working with. And of course, any districts who want to, enter into UDL work. We definitely want to continue to emphasize strong Tier 1 instructional priorities. The integration of content part is a work in progress. We're always, as coordinators, as a team, kind of tinkering and playing around and trying to figure out what else we can do and how we can do it better. And then we definitely want to continue broaden the understanding of everybody around UDL, because it's not just a set of tools. It's really about shifting mindset, just like Katie Novak says. It's an expression of a belief. And from that expression of a belief, it impacts how we design our environments, our lessons, and our community. And that is all that we had prepared. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions for me and Kim?
Are there any questions? Ms. Alvaro?
Thank you very much. This is very exciting. I'm going to talk to you, but also be cognizant of the microphone. So my question is, I'm looking at your slide number 6, the learner variability slide. What I believe you're saying is that you're not just looking at these students learn differently from these students, but this student learns differently at different points. Is that accurate?
Yes, and it's not just this student, it's that every student.
Right. Yeah. So I was taking it down to the specific level, because I think of like 100 years ago when I was in high school. If you took AP courses, you got all AP courses. And there were some AP courses I did really well in. And there were some that I really didn't belong in those classes. And the same with the other kids. The kids who didn't take AP courses could have benefited by maybe AP math, but because they weren't taking all the AP, they weren't. So that's what I mean about different students having different learning abilities within the same student. So you're taking that into consideration as well, right?
Yes, for sure. And I think what you said right there, where you said you felt like you didn't belong, I think the opportunity with UDL is increasing the chances that more students will feel a sense of belonging. Like in Redwood City with the TOSA group, they talked about how when you get to middle school, some students with IEPs are ashamed of their accommodations because they think it's a stigma. But what if accommodations were not just made for 1 or 2 students, but it was for every student? That might relieve some of that stigma, right? And it doesn't mean that every student has to use it. It's that reflection piece of expert learner and knowing, okay, right now I need this, right? And another example might be, audiobooks. I think I read books, but I listen to audiobooks. And sometimes I might have both. And depending on what's going on in my life or the mood that I'm in, I might prefer reading or I might prefer listening. But I know and I can decide what's best for me at that moment. But thinking about students, how often do they get those decision making? And if we could give them more of opportunities like that to reflect on their learning, then, we would have more students as expert learners.
That's really exciting to me. So thank you both very much for this.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Torres?
Hi, Erica and Kim. Thank you. That was great. I'm also very excited. So looking at the partnerships with the San Mateo County of Education, do you have at least one grade level or one group for each grade level? Do you know?
No. Can you say a little bit more about what you mean?
Yeah, so we have K through 12. I just want to make sure that you're working with at least every grade level, or are there just certain grade levels that you're working with?
With the Redwood City group, it's working with the principals. So all of the site leaders and district leaders are part of that. So it's the entire district at the instructional leadership level that is receiving that support, as well as the TOSAs. In the math, the RIMFA, what we were working with teachers starting, I think in early elementary, I'm not sure if it was first or second grade, through middle school there. And so we're beginning that work with individual teachers.
So I think we don't have a grade level identified yet because the work is early. I think pretty much everybody is in the early stages. I can say that in our team, we have elementary and middle school strengths. For myself, it's middle school, so that's where I would land towards. However, I think a lot of it really depends on each school site. So just as there's variability in student learners, we are finding tremendous variability among school sites and teachers, right? Teacher motivation, teacher willingness. And so I think those are going to be factors that go into deciding. I mean, that's to start. We'll probably start with grade levels and teams that are willing to start. But eventually we hope to bring it to all grade levels.
Yeah, I'd love to see how that looks all across the board. So thank you.
Mr. Weinfield?
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I especially appreciated one of the first slides, the definition. I love the definition of the predictability of outcomes based off of unchangeable characteristics. I think that's a great place to function from. My question is specifically related to slide 3. I noticed in math for English learners and students with disabilities that there was a relatively dramatic drop between the grades of 4th and 6th across the county. Is that just by circumstance? Maybe it's not too large of a sample size that would even out over a larger sample size, or do you think that the some element of the county dropped the ball there? And if so, what can we do about it?
Our trends are similar to state trends in the county, and our students, even though we are scoring well below standard with many of our student groups, we still perform above county or state averages in mathematics. We're really looking closely at the discrepancy, at why there are drops between different grade levels and why there's such a discrepancy between the ELA results and the mathematics results. And working with our site leaders and instructional leaders to work to solve that problem about what it is. There are many factors involved in mathematics teaching and learning. As you can imagine, we are looking at how often math is taught, the number of minutes, the curriculum math is used, and the teaching and learning strategies that are used in mathematics and ways teachers are given time to collaborate and really incorporate the shifts to the Common Core. So I can't give you a direct answer to that really important question that is very complex.
Mr. Cannon?
So thank you, Erica and Kim. Fascinating. And the examples, the concrete examples of things, like the ramps and the chairs, the pilots and so forth, were very, very helpful in envisioning what we're talking about. But as you go along, I would love to see an example in a classroom or a school as to how this is carried out. I'm just thinking about, when we started to talk about differentiated instruction, how overwhelming that seemed to me at that time. And now this sounds like we're differentiating for not just what, I mean, we're differentiating for dozens of kids, hundreds of kids. So any time that you have some examples to show of how this works as a practical matter would be a great thing for me.
I can give two. One, there are different entry levels. So one that I've been modeling just to make it easy to start is I use introversion as an example. I am highly introverted. And in my PD, what I have said is that I build in a lot of think time. I build in options for people to engage in a group or engage on your own. And most of the time, I think we've been very conditioned to engage as a group. So nobody has taken me up on those offers to engage on their own. But I make it known that that is an option for people. And I think it's really easy, and I ask people like, how did it feel to know that I designed my PD with you in mind, introversion? And most of the time I found most people are not introverted. There are only a few, but the few times that I've done it, both people said, I felt really seen. And I think for the students in the margins to feel seen, what might that do for their desire to be in school when usually they might not feel a sense of belonging or to feel seen? So small things like that. Another thing might be, I taught English middle school. A lot of times I had students maybe with dyslexia, and in their accommodation, they always had a read aloud option or an audio option. But why should an audio option just be for that student with an IEP? We can have audio options for every student. And just like the audiobook, they can choose when they might benefit from it. Of course, it's linked to the standard, but that could be an option for everybody. It might be a little bit more work for the teachers to create that audio if the curriculum doesn't offer an audio option. But I think that's one example of what it could look like. And there's a lot more. There's a whole guideline that has a lot of strategies that I didn't even touch on really, but there are a lot of examples out there.
Thank you, Erica.
Just to add on to what Erica just said and to your comment about how overwhelming it could be as a teacher to when you're asked to differentiate for all of your students. I think one of the key learnings that we've made around UDL compared to differentiation, it's just not solely this teacher's responsibility to figure out how to provide all the different access points for students. We also invite students in to support them in understanding themselves as a learner and to experience these different choices of the different things Eric has mentioned, plus more, and to be able to have agency and able to make those choices in their classroom and advocate for themselves. And so that's another space around feeling that you belong and being able to exercise your agency that can support the teacher being partners with their students rather than having to be the one who provides everything on their own without support.
Thank you, Kim.
Can I add one more example that I think is a fun one? So captions, closed captioning is, made for usually people who are hard of hearing, but I use it all the time when I'm watching movies for a lot of different reasons. But in my PD, I use a microphone and I turn on captions in Google, and all the educators are like, whoa, because they can now, even if they're in the back and they couldn't really hear what I was saying, they can now see it. And that's just another way for them to access the content. And as a classroom teacher, I always had the microphone, but I never used it because I thought I have a teacher voice. I don't need this. But if I were to go back into the classroom now, I would use the microphone and turn on the captions all the time because I don't know which students might benefit.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Weinfield?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just had a really quick follow-up. For the countywide data for cohort changes, do you know for the 2019 8th grade student cohort, which now at second glance, I believe is actually my grade, roughly how large was that sample size?
I don't know the size of it, but it would be all of the students who took the assessment across the county in those years. So I know we have 95,000 students. I mean, excuse me, 95,000 students in San Mateo County. However, only 3rd through 8th grade and 11th grade students are taking the test at any given year. So I would have to run those numbers to do that, but we don't actually have to do that. We can just Google it. and
Okay,
Tell you. We can find that.
thank you.
Ms. Benini?
Well, I just wanted to say this sounds amazing. I've been learning about UDL for years and really thinking around the word you just used, actually access, and doing a lot of work, not just in our realm, but in all access for, all persons with disabilities, and a lot of the work that I do on the Disabilities Commission. And we're trying to pin those things down, but it's completely parallel to the examples that you gave in making meetings accessible and making classrooms accessible, and just finding those spaces or those ways to do that. I appreciate the examples. Some of my questions that I wrote down were, what does this look like in a 6th grade math class? One example that I have experienced actually is, having like an extra person in the classroom. So like a SKIA in the classroom for one student, but then that helps other students. And then when that person isn't there, those students are also lacking that. So that could have been like a barrier that was being made, or a bridge, if you will. So my question with all of that, because most of my questions were answered, is are you yet trying to share and utilize any of these tools with the Corydon Community School classrooms?
No, not yet, because, they're working on a lot of, they just had their WASC accreditation last year. And from that, they have a lot to work on. And I think with all the changes, we don't want to throw one more thing, just as Kim mentioned, that's something that we're rarely conscious of. But I think we can start talking about it and thinking how we can, so I support them with the multilingual learners, and English Learner Achieve is something that they're really working on. So we don't want to throw too many things, but I haven't done PD, but what I would do is what I do with San Mateo Union and Sequoia Union is just kind of plant the seeds and model so that it's not, hey, we're going to UDL 2 on top of all the other things like the new curriculum that you just got and the EL Achieve and now UDL. So we want to, in Redwood City, we've talked about, we can do things with UDL at the forefront and just roll it out, maybe like a regular initiative as we would do, or it could be UDL more in the background where we're layering it in.
Are there any other questions? Well, thank you very much. It's very exciting. And we're looking forward to hearing more. So thank you. Item 7A, Superintendent McGee will provide a report on the Gateway Learning Series. Before we begin, are there any comments from the public?
It looks like we do have one hand up, Misty Sego, who is the author of the written comments that were submitted.
Okay, thank you. Misty?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening to all. Thank you for hearing my comment. I've sent in a copy of my comment and do hope you will read it in its entirety. I will, for the sake of time, be more concise. The report on the Gateway Learning Series, slide 4, mentions that relationships and environments matter. Slide 5 considers other means of correction than only suspension. It's not surprising that such information concerning Gateway is highlighted, as it is through Principal Shelley Johnson's purposeful vision that such dramatic positive change has been created at Gateway. She has been able to transform Gateway Community High School into an environment of care where students feel safe and where their needs are met. Restorative practices are always in focus. So again, I am glad to see that in this report that Gateway and its leadership is being given credit for such advances. The information on the subsequent slides, if viewed without the proper context, however, could tell a skewed view. Look at the scalability, affordability, disproportionality slide, for instance, which seems to claim that counselors, health and wellness ones, and campus supervision are unable to be provided due to a lack of infrastructure. I was on campus this morning. There's a brand new bilingual family counselor, so she'll be in the know on our families and their students. There were 2 therapists on campus. Both are there daily, with one dedicated to Gateway. Again, under Ms. Johnson's leadership, she has taken what used to be supervised mental health interns, providing 1 hour a week of individual or group counseling, to individual counseling for all students once a week, and group counseling once a week. And by the way, drop-ins are welcome. Furthermore, the slide's information seems to indicate that there is no supervision available to be provided. But I think we all remember that we did hire an assistant principal this year. And secondly, then why are people applying and interviewing for the open position that our superintendent came to you all on June 15th, 2022, asking for 3 FTEs for, the youth development and safety specialist? As for the section on disproportionality, the demographics on the ARIES system for this year's listed students for Gateway, and you can see that of the 24 students that have been listed within our Gateway system this year, 8 have listed white. And it cannot be said, well, we're only counting who is currently enrolled, because saying they are 100% of color would still prove false. This is the second time of my knowledge that demographic information presented to the board about Gateway has been untrue. And so I must question why. Does the truth not fit into the pushed agenda? Furthermore, the stats that are compiled are not surprising when we consider what Ms. Bonini spoke to at the June 15, 2022 board meeting. Staffing, or rather the lack thereof. Bonini expressed concern that there is inconsistency in what is being provided to students in terms of the number of teachers and teachers moving from site to site. And I see that credit recovery is mentioned in this report, and according to this report, a few students did not earn credits through credit recovery. First, it may be shocking to you, but not all students who choose to attend Gateway need credit recovery. I can think of 3 in this very moment who do not need credit recovery. Second, I also see that this learning series is led by SUH, SD, Superintendent Leach, and others. I believe the superintendent's familiar with who was fundamental to our credit recovery program throughout Horton Community. Our numbers for credit recovery under Trevor Leach were solid and successful. Who could begrudge Mr. Leach when so many teachers were pink slipped year after year? Ms. Bonini predicted that such a reduction in key teachers and such inconsistency would have an adverse effect. That said, they have interviewed and hired a credit recovery teacher to share at all sites. She has some mighty big shoes to fill, but she's doing a great job reestablishing and building upon Mr. Leach's solid foundation. As for attendance, please consider that we changed our system this year from Promise to ARIES. Attendance in Promise was taken daily, and attendance in ARIES is taken by period. There are many difficulties that are unique to Gateway, especially since teachers are moving from site to site. All the differing courses per student, yet all students under one teacher at the same time, and of course, the teachers being at 2 or 3 school sites. We certainly threw ARIES, and feel free to ask IT, our IT department, we threw them some curveballs this year. You'd think it wouldn't be an issue, but it was. And though it's gotten better, there are still some inconsistencies. Without a proper and thorough review of the data for this year, it would be negligent to consider the data 100% reliable. And certainly any comparison with previous years, well, I hope the differing factors were considered. And finally, be especially wary of the picture that may be painted for slide 11, Gateway 21-22 transition data. I can't say how it'll be painted, but allow me to say this. According to the slide, at least, 7 students returned to Gateway HS. They sure did. Why? Well, the slide won't tell you, but if you inquired, a few students just might. It's because Gateway is their choice, theirs and their family's choice. It's a place where many may stay just a little while and others choose to stay longer. But whatever their choice is, we are here for them. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for considering my comment.
Thank you. Superintendent McGee.
Thank you, Board President Gerard and members of the board, Commissioner Weinfield. So this is just to provide an overview of the process that the 5 leaders from Sequoia Union High School District and the 5 leaders on the team from San Mateo Union, as well as the team from the County Office of Education, are going through right now simply to learn more about conditions for learning, much like Coordinator Ng and Coordinator Bambao presented on the Universal Design for Learning presentation, that the environment and conditions for learning matter for kids. So, in one way that we are able to learn about that is to look at data. So I will begin with just the timeline for the learning series. There are 5 sessions. We kicked off last week. There will be 2 sessions via Zoom and 2 sessions that will be working sessions in person, including dinner. So a lot of this work is also intended to build collegiality and collaboration across the teams. We intend to complete our work by the end of June, and the 3 districts will bring forward, hopefully, some agreed upon recommendations for how we can better serve the needs of students in alternative settings in the county and inside our own programs. So the outcomes are intended to be to learn and reflect on best practices as are current now in 2023 across the 3 agencies, to really establish a common vision for what we hope to accomplish for our students. This is something we haven't necessarily been able to take a lot of time to thoughtfully discuss. We're always pressed for time. We do have meetings and work in best with the best outcomes for students in mind, but to really deeply think and discuss about a common vision for what we want to see for all our students across all 3 of our agencies is a powerful thing for students who are underserved and experiencing fragmented education. Another outcome will be that we can draft a joint proposal for how the different pathways that we see students can travel. Again, students don't get to Gateway until they've been through various sequences of processes inside their own districts. So part of that work will be to understand what those pathways and processes look like inside the 2 districts. We're already in 1 session. We've already learned the ways in which student needs are different in the North and the South County, and that's important for us to raise up and understand as we try to serve them jointly. And then we intend to prepare some kind of proposal to bring to the respective boards that will include the multiple options and pathways for services and programs. And we are exploring additional outcomes, because always when you come together and have these meaningful discussions around best practices and hear from experts in the field, that there's oftentimes additional outcomes that you didn't expect, right? So we're open to what those could be. The work is founded, we are using some anchor documents to operate from. There's 2 Learning Policy Institute documents that we're asking everyone to read. One was published in August of 2022, so last summer. You can see the authors there, and the article of the piece is titled "The Civil Rights Road to Deeper Learning." Just some high-level key themes out of this article is that learning is social, emotional, and academic. So we don't want to only look at academic outcomes, but we want to look at the way in which the learning environment supports the social and emotional needs of the students. The article emphasizes the importance of relationships, when positive relationships and trusting relationships are present in a learning environment. Students are more open to learning, and when they're negative and threatening, they dampen the student's enthusiasm to try or to learn. And so we know that a student is going to perform the best when those conditions are high levels of support and low levels of threat are combined together. The second anchor document that we're using is another Policy Learning Institute document. And it is about restorative practices. So building a positive school climate through that. We know that, and there's been lots and lots of recent data about suspensions and expulsions and the negative outcomes that are associated with those, especially for students of color. And so we really need to look at the practice, the ways in which students are coming to us through those pathways. And look at the ways in which the districts have alternative methods or restorative practices, perhaps inside their own agencies to slow down or prevent a student from being suspended or expelled and referred over to Gateway. So the work, we are anchoring the work of the learning series in our equity commitments. So we spent time at the first series really looking carefully at the equity work that we've been doing. The County Office of Education has, our staff has made great strides in this area this year. As I've mentioned several times, we're working with Dr. Lori Watson, who runs a program called RaceWorks. And we also are moving forward with our strategic plan and have a written equity statement for the first time in our existence. We know that it's where we are today with what we can stand behind, and we believe that it will continue to strengthen and change as we continue to grow and deepen in our equity commitment. But one of our actions there on the left are to, or on the right, excuse me, are to interrupt inequitable practices and replace them with equity-driven, transparent systems. So that is part of what our mission is, and also to center the voices of those who have been marginalized and underserved. San Mateo Union High School District has been doing deep equity work as a district for 3 or 4 years. They're also working with some of the same leaders that we've been working with, the street data authors, Shane Saphir and Jamila Dugan. They have a very extensive equity board policy that's about 3 pages long. I've only pulled really they articulate 3 goals that they have inside that equity policy. So you can see that they have their first goal as their commitment to fighting racism as an institution, and et cetera. It goes down what their second goal is and their third. They also have an administrative reg that matches their board policy that talks about the ways in which their practices inside the district can help uplift the policy. And thirdly, Sequoia Union High School District is in the process of working through their equity work as a district. They've done a lot of work at various individual school sites. And they do have their why statement that they feel ready to step forward with. The rest is still work that is ongoing inside their district. So just a little bit about the historical perspective of where we are at Gateway. These are slides that you've seen before. And you know that in the 23 years prior to 2013, which was when LCFF came in to play, the county office operated multiple school sites across the entire county, serving hundreds of students per year. And in 2013, when the funding changed with LCFF, those multiple sites were getting smaller and smaller and harder to staff and fund. And so the county office consolidated all those programs at the Gateway site. For several years, that site was serving approximately 60 students per year. And now we just start here on this graph, which you've seen before, with the 2017-18 school year with the numbers of students that were being served. So you can see that the numbers continue to lessen, which is good. That is evidence that perhaps fewer and fewer students are being expelled or referred to a program like Gateway. And I think that the districts have worked really hard to create also alternative programs and alternative pathways in their districts that serve students before they might be referred to Gateway. You can see that in the current year, since the first day of school of the 2022-23 year, we've served 19 students. Not all at one time, but over the course, cumulatively over the year. So initially, one of the issues about scalability is that when we try to be flexible and dynamic like a large comprehensive high school would, we don't always have the ability to move things around the way a district does. So when we have students with high and unique needs, or we have to be very creative with how we staff our teachers. In a larger high school, they have obviously more staff to move around into different sites and different classrooms. You can also move students from campus to campus, and we are limited to, really a single classroom or two. And so in the scalability piece, it is a challenge to run a school for 10 students and make that site feel dynamic and thriving. And back when we started this conversation, the affordability question was larger. The fewer students we serve at Gateway, the higher the cost per student becomes. We reset the bar for finances in 2015 or 2016 with the slot model, where each student, the cost of a seat was about $25,000 per student. And as we came out of COVID heading into the 2021 school year, we were looking at more than $50,000 per slot. And those costs do go up on an annual basis. And we had concerns about whether the districts were going to continue to commit to those costs. Disproportionality is a very large driver of this conversation. I know you can go up to Hillcrest and look at the population there and understand that there's very little diversity there, that it's largely students of color who are incarcerated in our juvenile settings. This year, and this data comes directly from Danya Uni, who's our CalPADS director for the county and the district. And I just got this data from her last week. So our current population for this year has been 100% students of color. The improvements in those trends is around the special ed students, the IEPs. Students with IEPs were more around the 70% level over the previous 2 years. And this year that trend is much lower, but we've been a lot more clear about the ways in which we can serve students with the staffing that we have and the training that our staff has. So we haven't been able to take every single student depending on their IEP needs. So this is last year's data. 25 students went through Gateway in the 21-22 school year. Of those 25, 2 students completed high school, one by passing their HiSET exam and one by graduating, completing their diploma. 7 of those 25 students re-enrolled in their district of residence, which is always the plan. They typically come to Gateway for a semester or 2, and then they go back and re-enter their home district. There were 7 students who returned to Gateway, which will happen over the course of 1 year to another. Of those 7 students from last year, we went in and looked at their data. 4 of them completed school, either graduated or completed their credits, and 3 of them did not finish at Gateway or in their districts. Actually, 1 of them went back to their district to continue their education, and 2 of them were enrolled in the Hillcrest program. Of the 25, 3 completed the school year, but they did not graduate. So they did not earn the credits to graduate. 3 dropped out and 3 entered the court school. So we have, not including the 7 that re-entered at Gateway, 9 of the students for whose outcomes we would want to see more improved or different, more positive than those. So this is this year's data. We have 19 students, as I said, 15 males and 4 females. The highest number of students that we see is in the 10th grade, and the districts corroborated that in our first learning session, that they see they have a lot of activity in the 10th grade. So that's something for us to look at, is what is happening between 9th and 10th grade, where students are sort of falling off the mark. And maybe there can be some interventions back in the districts in the summer or second semester of 9th grade year to prevent 10th graders, a higher number of 10th graders, ending up expelled. The race demographics are there for you to see for this year's students. In the other categories of the 19 students, 5 are categorized as English learners, 4 as students with disabilities, and 6 as socioeconomically disadvantaged. And then you see that today we have 13 students enrolled in the Gateway program as of May 1st, 7 from Sequoia, 4 from San Mateo, and 2 from other districts. Attendance is something we really want to take a hard look at in our data dive. We know that of the Sequoia students, 8 of 10 this year qualify as chronically absent. And we do know that students are not attending school on a regular basis the way we would want to see them attending. Attendance is a marker of other issues or concerns. It could be mental health concerns. It could be socioeconomic, pressures inside the family where students may be working late at night, helping provide for families, or it could be a lack of engagement in the program. So 8 of 10 students are chronically absent in this year from Sequoia, and 7 of 9 students chronically absent in San Mateo. So these data points give us things to ask more questions about, to dive in deeper, and that will be part of our learning series, and that both the partner districts, Sequoia and San Mateo, will be doing a deep data dive on their own student programs and their own student demographics, and bringing that forward to the group to help everybody understand better how they're operating inside their districts. For credit recovery is offered to students who need to recover credits. Not all students take advantage of it. So this year, this is just real numbers, that 3 of 8 students who were eligible for credit recovery pursued that and received credits, and 5 of the 8 did not pursue and received no additional credits for credit recovery. You can see that more students in San Mateo pursued the credit recovery offerings, 6 of 8, and 2 did not pursue credit recovery. So today I'm before you, kind of giving you the overview of the learning series itself. Our next session is next week, May 11th. It's a Zoom meeting. We will be studying the readings. We will be hearing from some speakers next week, including Nick Jasso from Project Change and Katie Hester from Fly. We will be hearing from some students next week And we're also doing some research on model programs in the county, one of which is Redwood High School in Sequoia Union High School District, as well as in the region and the state. And we're also looking at other programs that county offices run for alternative students, which includes a charter school model called Comeback Kids, which really captures students who are usually older, 16 or 17 through the age of 24, and operates more as like a late afternoon evening program and enables those students to earn their diplomas. So the county offices that run those programs, and there's a lot of them actually, see high numbers of enrollment in the 200 and 300 mark, and really fairly good outcomes for those programs for students recovering diplomas. That doesn't mean we're pursuing that. It just means we're studying what those programs look like, what they offer, and whether that's a need in San Mateo County. We have 2 partner districts who run really effective adult school programs. So that kind of a program may not be something that is, reasonable for our county, but it could be something that we could consider as an additional pathway. So this was just a slide that I used at the last convening as a way to close. It was sort of a lighthearted closing. That last week I was on a panel with the public libraries talking about artificial intelligence. So I was doing a lot of reading about artificial intelligence, and I was playing around with ChatGPT. And just as a test, I put in a question, what are excellent learning settings for expelled students? And within 10 seconds, it kind of populated this list of 5 really great directions. The first of which is personalized learning. And I'm a big believer in personalized learning. As you know, we piloted the Summit personalized learning platform in our court and community schools for 3 years. We learned a lot from that, and I saw that students benefited and teachers benefited. But anyway, it was a nice way to end the meeting with just some ideas for people to think about what do we really want? What kind of learning conditions do we really want to focus on and provide for our students in alternative settings? And finally, we really are basically going through what we call a street data equity transformation inquiry process, where we are listening and learning. We're uncovering things that we might not have otherwise noticed or understood about each other's systems. Then it's time to reimagine. How do we take all that learning and uncovering and think newly about what can we do better and more of, and to a higher quality with better outcomes. And then we take action to put those ideas into place. So it's connected to an idea called freedom dreaming. And I think it's a place where I'd like to leave you here today, because that's basically what we're in the process of doing. Freedom dreaming is an opportunity to visualize the future that we want to live in and harness the necessary tools and resources to actively move that dream toward a reality. It begins with addressing inequalities within ours and others' lives to build awareness, and then taking steps to enact change. And I would say that adequately and almost perfectly describes the process that we're undergoing. And I know that it will yield important and surprising results, and we look forward to learning together. And then I look forward to bringing forward more information to you in July. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Alvaro.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. I wanted to ask a sort of 2-part question. What about the other districts? Jeff, high school district, we used to serve with their own area up in north. and then there's 3 unifieds. I saw that you did have like 2 people from other districts, so I'm assuming, but are they part of this process? Are they part of the discussion?
They will be bringing forward at a later session, the ways in which they're serving their students who are suspended and expelled inside their districts. So they're going to share with us how they organize that. Generally, they serve students inside their own districts and do not expel students out.
Mhm.
Very rare that we have a student from, Jefferson or South San Francisco or Cabrillo. We do get them occasionally, but it's very rare. And they're essentially doing all of that inside their own local district, which is something that we just want to understand more about.
Yeah.
And then I also didn't talk about the anchor document, which is the 2021 triennial plan for suspended and expelled students. And it's a required plan that the county has. And it includes the plans of all the districts and then also what the county office takes responsibility for in that. And you have to update that plan every 3 years. So this plan was last updated in 2021 and it will be updated in 2024. So we explicitly stated at the beginning of the series that that's one of our goals here is as we go through this process and go through this discussion that we are working on updating the plan. We'll be well ahead of the timeline. But this learning series is really about the 3 key partners, and it's a very small group of people. It's basically the superintendents, the associate supes of student services, mental health support folks, and special ed directors. For us to learn and connect and create that vision across the 3 agencies. Once we've done that, once we come out of that in June, then we have all of next year to engage a larger stakeholder group, which will include and can include all those other districts, board members. I'm not sure how we'll proceed yet because we're not there yet, but I expect that there will be a year-long process to update the plan and to implement whatever ideas we come out of this process with.
So that's good. And I want to talk about population because I've been watching this for a very, very long time. And one of the things we've seen, and Mr. Gerard knows this too, is that we've seen crests and valleys and crests and valleys. So we know that that's true. We've had valleys so low that we didn't think we were going to be able to continue the program. And then we've had crests so high that we had to open another classroom. There's a lot of factors, the idea that districts are required in a more stringent manner now than they used to be to serve their own expelled students certainly affected it. The fact that we needed to make the decision for so many reasons to not have 4 community schools scattered throughout the county and have them in one place really said to, for instance, Jefferson, you can't get there from here. So there's not that they had, they had a decent population when we had the North School, but it's never been huge because of their own policies inside. So we've watched that happen. And then of course, when I look at this chart that you have on page 9, which says we went from 38 to 9, that's, that year was ground zero, right? That was everything went wrong. And it looks to me like we're beginning to build up the numbers again, slowly. Going from 9 to 19 is definitely progress in the right direction. So one of the things that I know I've said many, many, many times as we go through the process of looking at our community schools, Court School, we can't do anything about. It is what it is. We provide it, we do the best job we can, and whoever comes. We have nothing to do with that. But in terms of community schools, is to take a conservative view because whatever whatever it is now is going to be different next year. It's either going to be more, it's going to be less. It's going to be from a different district. All of a sudden, the numbers will flip around and you'll get more from San Mateo and less from Sequoia. It's just, it changes. It's volatile. And so I would just say that again, as you move forward with this, to keep in mind that volatility. And if we make plans based on 19 kids and somehow we kind of freeze it there, we're not allowing for the fact that that could change. So that's it. I just want to put out that
I'm
caution.
hesitant to speak out at all about what I would like to see, because this isn't about me. It's about all the process and all of the leaders. But I would like to, if we're going to have a program on that campus, whatever it is, it would be great if we could be serving as many students as possible, and fully maximizing the capacity and making it more of a thriving campus. So that would be a nice look, right? So the idea is, how do we do that well?
Are there any other questions or comments? No, Ms. Panini?
My microphone, sorry. So I have a few comments. First, I am excited to see this plan. I think the outcomes of gathering best practices, I'm just looking at my slide here, the creating this vision and trying to figure out what the students in our county need is really, really important. And I'm glad that you're embarking on this learning series. I'm sure it will be fruitful in terms of knowing what the needs are, which I know a year ago we were talking about, starting to talk about this a year plus, and looking at the numbers and the costs and then the shifts in sort of, is this, do you think that this is the best program, and why, all the reasons why students might be coming or not, or it might be needed or not. And so I'm excited about that process. And I think that, and I know that we have had conversations in the meantime. We've had a few board presentations. We've had some offline conversations around what could be the outcome. And you don't know the outcome yet. You couldn't know because you're going through this process. And so, I really think that there are a few things that are still troubling me about the process that I'd like to speak about. We started this conversation with a, students aren't coming, it's too expensive and we can't afford to supplement the funding. Then we came to the point where we understood, it was cost neutral and we weren't talking about the funding. And we still made at that time, we made a decision. We were asked to make a decision around the March 15th deadline for layoffs, which is understandable if you're not going to have, you're going to understand what the coming year is. And then that decision needed to be made. But the conversation has evolved. It's not just about the money now. It's about equity. It's about, is it the best program? And so that's why this is an important conversation. But where I'm going with this is we have been sharing the narrative with our, parents, with our students, with our, the families, with our districts, that we kind of know the outcome, that it's closing, right? And that's been a decision that we made, and then we pushed back the date. And in all of that, what I sense from community is anxiety, is sort of this unsettled, stressful feeling about, well, we don't know what's happening exactly. It could be something great, but we don't know what it is. And so, but we know it's closing. And that's coming from everybody that I talk to, right? And so I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about that specific closing date because this is a super important process. If you read all the things that we're responsible for as a board, this is like one of the things we're responsible for. And it's because this group of students is, a group that needs a lot of things for whatever circumstances have come along. And so we need to get it as right as we can. Right. So I really feel like it's like the elephant in the room. It's like, well, we're planning for what's best. And if what comes out of it is that potentially we really do need to have a space for students off of their campuses for whatever reason. I've listed many of them in prior statements, like they need to be off campus. They need to have a space where they can focus because there's a lot of things happening there that caused them to, get into the situation that they're in or whatever that is. I've heard a number of stories. And so, we don't know what that is. So I guess, I feel like it will impact these conversations. The fact that there's this closing date, it's closing. We have this date right now. It's June 30th, 2024, right? And I appreciate the reasons why it was a date. I appreciate that there's an ongoing process, but I do think that the conversation has changed. And so at this point, I feel like it's sort of, it could impact the conversations already. Eventually you'll get to these conversations with other board members, in the districts, but I talk to them all the time. They're stressed out. They're worried about this. And so, they'll get that in the normal course of business, right? But there are things that still need to happen. You're doing this process. Awesome. And then we're going to have some more information. And then you're going to have a broader stakeholder engagement. And maybe all of that happens in a year. It could. But then we have to plan for the year, for what's happening with those students, and doing all of that simultaneously, like working backwards from whatever that date is, seems really hard, seems soon. And so with all of that, I would like that date to not be a date. I'm fully invested in supporting the schools that we, that are our Corydon community schools, and making this whatever it is. Or if at the end of the day, the districts find a way that they say, oh my gosh, whatever Jefferson Union is doing, we want to do that. And we don't need it. I mean, then we would have that opportunity. But I don't feel comfortable with the date. It's the only thing about this process that's bothering me personally. And so, what I would like to see is for us to change, to not have a date. And so what I would really like to know from, I guess my fellow board members, is, and you, Superintendent McGee, is why is that date important right now? Is it a hindrance? Is it not? Is there some scenario where we could discuss rescinding that date, with the understanding that this is all happening and that maybe it will come back to us before that, when that's needed. But I'm also feeling the pressure of that. And so I'm, would love to hear what other people think, if anyone has any comments, but I'm inclined to initiate a process to make a motion to rescind that decision.
So thank you for articulating it. And I hear you. I am, and my fellow superintendents are 100% confident that we have time to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And I believe it's premature to change anything at this point. I'll be coming back to you in July with the outcomes, as will the other superintendents, with the outcomes of our process. And I think it will be much clearer at that point what is the right next thing to do. And I believe that if you do change the date, that it gets right in the middle of our process and it distracts everybody from what we're focusing on. And I think it will be a detriment to the process.
Ms.
And
Benini.
that's just my opinion.
So what I would say is that I'm fairly concerned that for 2 months during the summer, we don't have 2 board members. So you're going to come back and give us this information and we're going to have 5 board members here.
So the board can take, if they needed to take action, you can take action in September. We can go ahead and begin our work as administrators and school leaders.
Yeah, I wasn't really referring to action, just more discussion and like understanding the process. And I feel like, sure, you may think that it can take as long as it takes, and you could be right. But I honestly feel like it's a hindrance. And so I don't think it's a distraction if you take the date away. I actually think the date being there is, it's putting pressure on the system. I say this with all due respect. I firmly believe that you're engaging in the process, and I appreciate it, and I want to know all of it. But I think you already know what you want. I think you know that you want to close it because you did that.
Please don't put words in my mouth.
But when you came to us in January of last year, none of this was in place. This is essentially a process that started in the interim because there were a lot of questions, right? Because Sequoia couldn't agree to allow San Mateo Union students, they wouldn't agree to allow San Mateo Union students to attend if they took over the program. Initially, it was just, we're going to give this is a simplification, but Sequoia is going to have the program and we're going to support them, maybe on our campus. Right? So it's changed. The facts have changed. And I feel like there is pressure. I know that the people who are in the districts, they're the trustees anyway, that there is pressure, that they are hearing, that they know the things it's closing. And that's an outcome. When we say we don't know the outcomes, we're stating an outcome without knowing all the facts. And so I do think it's impacting the whole process. I want it to be a very good process. I love what you have in these slides, but I just think it's a hindrance. Does anyone else have thoughts?
Well, maybe this is something that you've now brought up and other board members can think about. And then we can bring it back and discuss it when they've had a chance to think and mull it over themselves and discuss it and make a decision. Is that acceptable for now? Mr. Camacho.
So I think at one point in one of the updates that you provided on the process, you said that it could be the case that you decide, not you, but the working group decides that a presence at Gateway is one of the possible outcomes.
A
So
program at the campus.
a program at the site. So, right, I think we're talking about the site. So if that is the decision that this group, or if that's the recommendation that this group makes, what is the plan for rescinding if rescinding is necessary?
It would only be necessary if we decided to keep Gateway as a school in its current model. If it is a completely different model, it probably should have a different school name and it should have a different school number. Because if you go back to the list of what students in expelled settings, how the conditions in which they thrive, one is flexible scheduling, for instance. So in order to really do freedom dreaming and transformational thinking, we have to get away from the structure that is, and we have to be able to think about anything that's possible. And so if it looks nothing like Gateway, then I think it should be a different school. And I think we should let that process happen and see where we land. And I think that there will be plenty of time to take action forward or backward based on the direction that we would recommend.
So to your question, or to your point about, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I really do not want to. So I want to make sure I understand. Is it possible that you're saying that transformative education is not possible in the schoolhouse that exists right now?
I really don't want to answer that question because I don't want
Fair.
to bias the process.
Yeah.
I'm one person participating in the process. And I'll bring my knowledge and my vision and my things forward, but that doesn't mean that it gets voted.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to be agnostic right now about where we're going to end up, because I'm very comfortable being in a creative journey, and all the folks are at the table and they're invested, and that's a really great opportunity. And it's been hard to get to this place. So I really want to protect the process and the integrity of it and let it play out as it will.
I
without
understand
being-
the position you're saying, and that's why I said I don't want to put words in your mouth, because I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. And so your agnosticism around it is helpful, because I think that is helpful if you're really envisioning here. As kind of the board pseudo representative to this conversation, I would like, hopefully, if you can bring a talking point of like, it can also be devastating if that is a conversation within that group, that transformation can't happen within a schoolhouse, because I think, not related to our program, to the Gateway program, there are schools up and down the county and across the state that are trying to make transformational education happen within their existing school structures. And so I just think that's an important talking point in that, because I still want to give hope to school leaders that are really trying to shift things within these boundaries that I think we're coming across, but giving them room to say, we can still make transformational change within this box. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Well, that box is there, it's on the continuum. And then here's something completely in like outer space. And so we're going to kind of look at that space and hopefully be in that space for a little bit and consider what might be possible and see where we end up. And maybe we end up over here in the existing box. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Ms. Alvaro.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just confused and I just need clarification on something. What is the reason, and you probably articulated it and I just am not processing it today. What is the reason why having a deadline looming to close the school helps the process you're going through?
Well, right now, that's the existing condition. So everyone comes forward knowing here's the situation. If we change the situation, then we're going to spend time thinking about, oh, now it's different. Now we don't have to think, now we don't. So it has the ability to distract the focus from let's freedom dream. That's what we want the focus to be. What do students need? Let's listen to student voice. What is the best practice right now in 2023, right? We only have 5 sessions. So we don't have a lot of time to get distracted. We really want to stay motivated about, let's truly commit to thinking about what could we create here together. And I have to say, the power of this is that we're together. That we've never really had all the partners at the table leaned in, giving their time. And the superintendent saying, this is important, we're going to talk about this.
Yeah.
So to lose that, it's a fine line. And
Yeah,
there's a
and
lot of things to do out there.
And that's where I'm confused. The process looks wonderful. Who's at the table looks wonderful. What you're trying to talk about looks wonderful. I'm just missing the piece where having a deadline looming makes it possible and not having a deadline looming makes it impossible. I'm just not getting it.
Well, I've said it twice, and I don't know that if I say it a third time, it'll matter. But I just believe that we need to focus on the process that I've outlined, and that's enough to think about right now.
Thank you.
Ms. Bonini.
I'm also, as I already stated, struggling with that concept. It really can't get past, and we've had this conversation twice, once here in this room and once in your conference room, around the statements that were made concerning why we had to sort of launch into this. And what you just said, if you were to change sort of this pressure, like we have to do it, we're doing it, we're making a change, and then people won't be engaged. I mean, I think just heard you say that again, that you think that the districts wouldn't be as engaged if they didn't have this looming deadline because they would just not continue their interest. And I disagree.
Well, I didn't say that. I said it will be distracting.
Well, I heard it, but I think it's distracting. I think it's distracting for, far be it for me to say the word staff, but I think it's distracting for staff. I also think it's distracting for students. I also, again, think it's distracting for parents. I think it's distracting for those involved. I think it's going to take some time, and it may be a slower process. We don't know what's going to happen when it gets to the other boards. And ultimately, whatever comes forward, I'm, sure our board would definitely, would be in line with things that came forward. But we do have responsibilities in regard to the school, right? We do as board members. Our board responsibilities under the Ed Code are, to maintain the school, to, adopt the courses of study, to make sure that they're effective. And what I'm hearing is that they don't seem like they've been effective because of these data points that we're seeing. And so that's under what we're supposed to be doing. We're acting as a school district in this role. And to that end, just preview for future agenda items, I'm going to re-ask that we have a board subcommittee that participates or listens or hears or knows more about what's going on with this on an ongoing basis, because it's super important to this board. If it weren't as important as I'm saying, when you first brought this item to us in January, before we reconsidered it, we wouldn't have voted to not close it. That was the first vote. I know it's not the vote now. Sorry, living in the past, but it was the vote was not to close it. So I know that this is really important to this board because of all of those reasons. And I am going to say right now that I'm giving notice that I'm going to hopefully either on the agenda or not, make a motion to rescind the date at the next meeting. And under Robert's rules, that will require a majority vote at the next meeting. I'm making that request now.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you
Thank you.
for your presentation. Item 7B is superintendent's comment. Superintendent McGee, do you have any comments to share?
I do. Tonight on the consent agenda, you had a resolution for safe storage of firearms. It is not a resolution that is required for the board to pass, but it does support new legislation that requires school districts to inform their community members about the safe storage of firearms. It is an additional responsibility for school districts to do. And in support of that process, it's really about a public messaging effort to get this out there into the public sphere. So if any of you would like to be part of perhaps speaking at other board meetings or helping support this effort as we go forward into the new school year, please let me know. You may know that there have been 188 mass shootings in this country so far this year. And 14,000 people so far this year have died in gun-related deaths. And today there was a shooting in Atlanta. So the importance of safe gun storage has never been higher. And I would like, we will be taking a leadership role through the Coalition for Safe Schools and Communities to help support this in other districts. And if you would like to work with me in reaching out to other board members, I'd be happy to join you. Yesterday, May 2nd, was National Teacher Appreciation Day, and the month of May is a time to appreciate educators all across our schools and districts. So I want to acknowledge all of our school staff tonight for their hard work with, especially the last couple of weeks they've been working with Dr. Lori Watson, our equity consultant, doing really hard work. And the schools team continues to participate and make progress on their specific strategic plans for their programs, led by Associate Superintendent Schaus. And we're looking forward to celebrating their efforts across all of our school programs with a barbecue style lunch. There won't actually be briquettes burning or smoke, but it will be a barbecue themed lunch on May 31st at the Ann Campbell Center. I just want to thank the leadership of Coordinator Erica Ng and Kim Bambao for the work they're doing on Universal Design for Learning. It is absolutely changing the focus of instructional conversations in our county. They are leading transformational change in some of our districts, and they are highly requested and have very few open dates on their calendar. So they're doing really great work. There's a number of other county staff who have received awards and accolades in the last couple of weeks that I'd like to share with you. Our coordinator of English Language Arts, Glenn Lee, was named to the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Equity Advisory Council, which is a statewide council for her expertise. So we're really thrilled for her. Monica Woodworth, who is one of our special education program school nurses, received the 2023 Excellence in School Nursing Award. We just learned about that today from the California School Nurses Association. Lori Owens has a long list of awards, but her most recent award was from the Krause Center for Innovation. She received the Tech and Learning Innovative Leader Award at the Tech and Learning Summit. So congratulations to our Chief Technology Officer, Lori Owens. And then Teresa Baez-Kelly is being recognized for her leadership with Safe Routes to School by the San Mateo Foster City School District at their second annual Partners Luncheon on May 16th. And she just learned about that today as well. And then our outdoor education and our outdoor learning initiative, which is part of our environmental literacy work, will be receiving a Kent Award on May 19th. So we're excited for them. If any of you would like to attend that, we'd love to have you. It is your association dinner, but it would be great to have you in support of our team winning their Kent Award. As you know, we have a number of school graduations coming up over the next few weeks, and you have all the dates on your board calendar. But I did want to mention that we're graduating in the second cohort of our SMCOE Alder teacher residency residents. 9 graduates will graduate at CSU East Bay on June 3rd. And so if you have interest in attending that ceremony, please let me know. We are going to have a special ceremony here or celebration for them here. So I'll make sure you have those dates. These residents have done amazing work and are really ready to be superstars in full-time teacher roles next year. So we're very excited for them. And I want to shout out to our director, Carmen French, who's took over this role this year. It's her first year directing the teacher residency program. So it's been a steep learning curve for her, and she has done an amazing job. She's really proud of her graduating residents, and we're really proud of her. So it's a nice circle. Two more things. One is that in June, there is a conference in San Diego. It's the Labor Management Institute, and it's from June 20th to June 22nd. And we will be traveling down to San Diego. Jeffrey Duncan Andrade will be a keynote speaker. Participating in that conference will be at least 2 members of each of our labor groups, along with myself, Associate Superintendent Schaus, Associate Superintendent Moore, and Executive Director Sarah Notch, as well as Executive Director Randy Perez. So it will be a big group from San Mateo County, but we're looking forward to attending and learning together. And then last but not least, for May birthdays, we have a happy birthday coming to Chief Technology Officer Lori Owens on May 16th. So happy birthday, Lori, early. Our next board meeting is until the 17th. So it's the day before, right? And that concludes my comments for tonight.
Thank you very much. Item 8A, after being reviewed at the previous board meeting, the 2023-2024 board meeting calendar is before the board for approval. Before we begin, are there any comments from the public? Would any of the board members like to discuss the proposed dates? Ms. Alvaro?
Turn on my mic, it'll work better. I just had a question. I noticed at the bottom of it, the Good Beginnings workshop got scheduled for Saturday, August 26th. And the last correspondence I recall seeing was board members couldn't meet on the Wednesday night of the board meeting that week. So could we meet either Tuesday or Thursday? To which I responded, either of those would work for me. But I don't recall seeing Saturday, the 26th as an option.
May I speak to that?
Yeah.
Yes,
So
you may.
that was an original date that the board had done a doodle poll, and all but one board member could make that date on August 26th. And so we were trying to find
Went back to-
another date to get all 7. But the CSBA trainers were not available on either of those dates.
So how many board members, I mean, obviously August is a long ways away and things happen. How many board members currently are signed up for that date?
Well, 6 of 7 are available, and it is a question for the board. The CSBA team can do this date, but it's a question for the board if you want to do a workshop without one of your board members able to attend.
What is the board's pleasure on this one? Ms. Bonini?
I think we need to have all of our board members present.
Pardon me?
I think we need to have all board members present for this workshop.
So do you suggest we put it off till September or another time?
I don't think there's any date before August 30th that is going to work for
No,
everybody.
I knew it would have to be after
Yeah.
August 24th or 6th or
So
whatever
it's
that,
kind of that, you're extending it further out than you want to, I know,
I know,
but you're also holding on to a value of wanting all 7 board members. So-
which I do think is valuable. Would the rest of the board agree to that we should have all 7?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, could we try extending it out and moving, otherwise approving with that date not included?
And one way possibly to do this, because I don't know about the CSBA trainers and what they can do, but is to fold it around an existing board meeting date. so that everybody already has the evening on their calendar for the board meeting. And if you came in a few hours early, you could get in the workshop as a possible way to take it on.
Would everybody be agreeable to that? Mr. Cannon?
Basically, it's 2 hours. Basically, it's a 2 hour,
No, I think it's a
Train.
6 hour
oh, it's a
workshop.
6 hour.
And the board had sort of indicated that they wanted to do it all at once.
I was just gonna recommend, because we actually did have, I think, 1 or 2 dates at work and CSBA can't do it. So if you could get from them what days they can't and what days they can and tell them how much trouble we're having, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, they know we're having trouble.
But we need their schedule because they're the ones that. said
Right,
no
I've
to-
tried it multiple ways
Okay.
to get it scheduled. So I will go back to them and get dates that they could be available in September. And I can back map from there with the board.
Thank you very much. Are there, yes,
Oh.
Mr. Torres?
Oh, so if we do move it earlier and choose a board meeting date, would we be able to do July 19th?
No, I don't believe so.
We have 2 board members that are not going to be here for part of the summer.
Oh, okay.
So that's what the issue is. Ms. Alvaro?
So my question is just, could I move approval of this calendar so we could get it moving with the exception of the Good Beginnings workshop date, which is still pending?
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay. There is a motion to approve the board meeting calendar made by Ms. Alvaro and a second made by Mr. Cannon. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion passes with a unanimous vote and the board meeting calendar for the 2023-2024 school year has been approved. Item 8B, the board will suggest topics for future board agendas. Superintendent McGee would like to speak further to the information provided in the cover memo for this item.
Just to state that there's, as we've been doing this process, the topics have been adding up. So I think it's best to include them in a cover memo each board meeting so we can kind of track them. And so this was the first effort to do that about what the topic is, who suggested it, what some comments that might help as far as timing or whether it makes sense for me or my staff as far as the work that's going on in the office. And so that's why the cover memo is more detailed.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any suggested topics for future agendas at this time? Ms. Benini?
So this isn't really a topic, but usually our resolutions are on consent. And it's a question. I know that we went away from our normal process of doing resolutions. I was tracking them for like 2 years. And they were repeated, there'd be like, as I'll mention in my comments, May is Mental Health Month. And so there would be a resolution to that effect, in addition to what was mentioned in public comment around having a resolution for the week that is typically celebrated for classified staff. And there's a separate week, right, for certificated staff. So my request is those 3 items, those 3 resolutions, which I believe we have probably some form of them somewhere, that if they're not already slated to be on the May 17th agenda, that we add them.
And may I add about the resolutions is that any resolution can be put onto a board agenda that the board would like to have, but it's helpful if you make specific requests as opposed to just turning them over year after year, because the sort of lose their meaning a little bit. And so if we get requests from anybody, we usually bring it forward, but that's kind of the way we talked about doing the resolutions from this point forth, so that in the board recommending future agenda items could include resolutions that you would like to see, or you can send emails.
Okay. Yeah, those three are very important to me to have every year.
So that,
And I intend to be here.
May is
at
mental
least a
health
couple more
month.
years.
Is that what you're saying? May for mental health
mental
month,
health
and then the
month.
2 employee recognitions?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
And I just will reiterate my request. I know it's not, well, it could be an agenda item, I suppose, but my request is to President Gerard to form a subcommittee for the gateway issue
Okay,
and to appoint members.
thank you. Are there any other additions or items that the board would like to see? Okay, thank you. Item 8C.
Before you move on, one thing that's challenging in this is how to prioritize all the topics. And so that's one reason to list them out. So if there's anything that anybody wants to lift up, like Trustee Benini just did, that's helpful. So it's not just about them existing, but also helping us decide how to
What the
bring them
priorities are.
forward and in what order. So if there's something that's more, feels like a higher priority, or that the whole board would have a strong feeling about, it would be good to hear at this time in the agenda going forward.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Benini.
Well, I would just note, I appreciate the list, first of all. I have a list too, and I'm happy to see it here. But I think some of these things have fallen off the list or been done. So that would be, already, like the site visit. I mean, obviously we want to do more of those, but we've done that. And then the final item on the list is, potentially my prior statement of notice of motion for rescission, or if it's an agenda item. So anyway.
Okay.
I'm raising up those ones.
All right. Thank you. Item 8C, board members will comment. And I will start with Mr. Lempert. Mr. Weinfield.
Thank you. My remarks are quite brief tonight. I just wanted to restate how I greatly appreciated the presentation on equity in education and eliminating predictability of student outcomes based off of unchangeable characteristics. I think that this is such a worthy goal for the county to embark on, and I really appreciate it, that A, that being agendized, and B, the county diverting resources to this program. So I really appreciate that. To any youth that are listening right now, I know that testing and graduating whatever grade they're in, all that stuff is really coming to a climax right now. And so I hope all youth for Mental Health Month are prioritizing their mental health, taking breaks when needed, and doing the best that they possibly can on all exams that may come up. And that is all I have. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cannon.
So I wanted to thank Erica and Kim for their presentation tonight, and just opening my eyes to so many more possibilities. And wanted to say how much I appreciated the opportunity to tour Oxford Day Academy and learn more about that model. It's so different than anything I've ever been involved in, that it's taking me a long time to get my head around how that works and learn enough about it to be confident about it. And I do want to thank the business office for the report. All three of your outstanding people who who talked to us about budget last week. It was very helpful and thorough and obviously capable people. Thank you.
Mr. Camacho.
Thank you for reminding me of the board budget study session. That was very well done. So thank you to Deputy Superintendent Bultema and your whole team who was there. Answered some great questions and provided a lot of information. Superintendent McGee and I and Trustee Bonini, we attended the progress seminar. Was that last weekend? Superintendent McGee has been on the planning committee, the chair of the planning committee, and she's been really helpful in bringing the needs of children and families to the conversations that are happening at the progress seminar. So thank you for including me in the panel on climate 2035. I would say a progress seminar is always really great to be able to connect with other people in the county, other leaders in the county. I don't know that I'll go back to progress seminar. I felt like Trustee Bonini and me and Ms. McGee or Superintendent McGee were the only ones talking about children and families. And it honestly got really lonely talking about kids in a place where lots of things can happen. And there's so much power in that room. And so, but I appreciate your efforts to really at least bring the conversation to that place because it needed to be there. We'll just continue doing the work in all the other spaces we can. But I think it has had an impact these last 2 years to have someone speaking specifically to education in those rooms, and everyone has to go through them, or at least everyone that's not running for office has to go through them. So thank you. That's a big thank you for the last 2 years. Thank you.
Ms. Alvaro.
So I wanted to tell Deputy Superintendent Bultema that your team did a great job. You knew they would. Minette Manio, Marianne Reyes, and Wendy Richard were excellent and to the point and explained things well. And it was really nice. And a lot of others of your staff were also here just to be in attendance. I think they were being supportive of it, but it was great to have everybody. I want to congratulate Gwen Lee and Lori Owens and Teresa Valles Kelly, and of course, our Sterling Outdoor Education Program for those awards. I know you mentioned somebody else and I didn't type fast enough to get it, but congratulations to that person too. Is Lori still here hiding behind the podium? She is. There you are. All I can see is the tip of your fingers. So I wanted to thank Lori Owens for her intervention today. I got a very strange email that purported to be from our business office and smelled funny. And so the first thing I did was forward it to Lori Owens and to Kevin Bultema and said, did you send me this? Because this seems odd. And Lori got back to me very quickly and said, no, I didn't. It's phishing. It's targeted phishing. It said it was from the County Office of Ed. It just smelled funny. So thank you for being very responsive and happy birthday, Lori.
Mr. Torres.
Thank you. Last week was a very busy week. So Tuesday, the Redwood City Education Foundation had their equity summit, and Sarah Alexander, who's the new executive director, did an amazing job. She had a panelist of great people informing the community on what's going on in those schools and their efforts on focusing on three of the schools due to budget constraints and lack of PTOs. The following day was the Adolescent Counseling Services Luncheon, and that's a great organization. They support My Youth Center, and they also support the Oxford Day Academy, which we had the privilege of touring the very next day. I agree, it was great to see their model. We got to sit in and see the teachers work with the students, and it was a very small setting, and I wish I could do that again, but very busy schedule. The next day we had the budget study session, which was great for my first one here. I've looked at numbers and budgets before, and I love numbers, so that was great. That same day, the Ravenswood Education Foundation also had their Shine event, and They put on a beautiful event, had a panelist of their students, and seeing the outcomes of their work was very evident in that. So they're doing an amazing job. And thank you to all the speakers today. And happy early birthday, Lori.
Ms. Benini.
Again, I just want to highlight that May is Mental Health Month. Right before each of our first meetings of the month, I have the Behavioral Health Commission meeting. So that is why I delivered each of you a green ribbon button. Lime green is the color for Mental Health Month. So wear it proudly, share it. Usually it sparks some conversation like, why are you wearing a green pin with a ribbon? And that leads me to, this is a very tiny flyer, but I think it's on the website for BHRS. And so their theme always comes from the state. So it's statewide. And this year the theme is share. So the hashtag is share #4 MH, share for mental health, and all the different ways that you can share. Some examples are share how you practice self-care, share how you overcame stigma, share your journey, share how you get support, share how you practice mental wellness, things like that, share your story. So in addition to having a great presentation today from Sylvia Tang, who's from the Office of Diversity and Equity, who organizes all of this and gave me all the pins, there are 19 events highlighted on BHRS's site, one of which is the poetry event that I mentioned last meeting, and that is this Saturday at Woodside High School. So if you want to know more about that, let me know. And at that event, it's also co-hosted by Sequoia Union High School District. And Carrie Dubois, who's on their board, is on a panel. So I asked her if she would do that, and she graciously said she would. In addition, since we had that meeting today, I just wanted to, I don't have the list of honorees, but there were a number of amazing honorees this year for the Tony Hoffman Award, which is given by our commission. I think there were like 6 or 7. 2 of them were friends of mine from NAMI. And then there was an organization that works with postpartum mothers. And it was just a lot of crying happening at the end of that meeting around 5:30. It was very emotional. So just a lot of things going on for Mental Health Month. So if you are wanting to know anything about that, you can let me know. And then I also really enjoyed the tour at Oxford Day Academy and getting to meet Latrice Bennett in person and observe, President Gerard and I observed the same tutorial that they do and learn the schedule and more about like how it works. And it was really great. I learned a lot and I was inspired by it. So yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to quickly piggyback on all of my fellow board members. Certainly, this past week has been a week of learning. We did our Oxford Day Academy tour. We did our budget study session, which was also excellent. I also attended a very, very informative LCAP meeting on Monday, which I really, really appreciate. Thank you so much, Chris. It was very informative. Yesterday, I spent the day at the Napa County Office of Education. And I actually did a governance training for their board. And I must say, it's my first step in the water for quite a while in training on governance. And it was under the auspices of CCBE, and I really enjoyed it. The board was very, very receptive and very nice. And they said they all learned, so that's a good thing. But I did enjoy the visit and getting to visit their office. It was very nice. I want to say congratulations to all of our San Mateo Office of Education award winners. It's so nice when there is a long list. It's wonderful. And Lori, happy birthday. Enjoy. And with that, our next regular meeting will take place on Wednesday, May 17th, 2023 at 7 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned.